The studio lights were bright and cold, and the cameras made a soft buzzing sound as producers gave last-minute instructions. Through their earpieces, behind the two podiums, a big screen displayed the title, Global Power and Responsibility, America and the World. But honestly, no one came to hear about policies, they came for the showdown. On one side stood Representative Jasmine Crockett, confident, stylish, and known for her sharp comebacks. She was used to winning debates on TV and putting foreign leaders in their place. Tonight, she thought, would be the same. On the other side stood Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. He looked calm, almost too calm, as he adjusted the sleeves of his plain brown suit. No flag pin, no big team around him, just his presence and a quiet strength that made even the experienced producers stop and watch. Many people in the room didn't know much about him. For Jasmine, he was just another target. As the host welcomed the live audience, applause filled the room. But it quickly faded when Jasmine leaned into her mic with a practiced smile and said, "President Traoré, welcome. I'm sure it's interesting for you to be in a place like this." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Traoré didn't answer right away, he just gave a calm nod. Jasmine continued, "I mean, let's be honest, this isn't Ouagadougou, this is Washington. The big leagues." Her comment was sarcastic, but delivered smoothly, with typical American confidence. Some people laughed, others looked uneasy. Then Traoré leaned forward, speaking with a calm and steady voice. "You're right, Representative Crockett, this is not Ouagadougou. And that's exactly why I'm here, because rooms like this need different voices. Voices that don't repeat the same ideas generation after generation." He didn't speak loudly, but his words made the entire room quiet. Jasmine paused, not because she was angry, but because something in his calm tone threw her off. The host quickly tried to move on, saying, "Let's talk about global responsibility." But everyone could feel the shift. This wasn't going to be just another debate. Something deeper had started, and Traoré had just made his first move, and it was one she couldn't ignore. Jasmine Crockett leaned on her podium, crossing her arms. Her smile came back, but this time it felt forced. She was used to guests who got angry when challenged, not ones who stayed calm and clever. That wasn't how these debates usually went. She leaned forward, pretending to be curious, and said, "So President Traoré, you always talk about Africa's independence, but isn't it a little hypocritical to lecture Americans while still accepting billions in aid and support from us?" The crowd murmured, but Traoré didn't react. He took a deep breath and calmly placed his hands on the podium. "You're misunderstanding aid," he said. "Real help lifts people up, but aid with strings attached, that's not help, it's control. And I didn't come here to be lectured under the disguise of generosity." Jasmine quickly cut in. "Well, then maybe you should stop showing up on Western television. You want the benefits, but none of the humility." A few people gasped, some clapped quietly. She thought she had him cornered, but Traoré took a small step forward and said, steady as ever, "Humility is knowing your place in the world, not assuming your place is always at the top. I didn't come here for benefits, Representative. I came to challenge the arrogance that thinks only certain countries get to define what's civilized or responsible." The entire studio went quiet. Now, no one knew who to cheer for. Jasmine wasn't finished. She tilted her head, trying to stay cool, and said, "You're passionate." "Sure, but passion doesn't build economies. You sound like a revolutionary. Meanwhile, we build, we lead." Traoré paused on purpose, with control. "I'm not here to lead your country," he said. "I'm here to stop your country from leading mine." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The words hit like a cannon. Even the host couldn't speak. Jasmine looked away for a moment. Blinking fast, her smile was gone. With just one line, Traoré had flipped the whole conversation. It wasn't a debate between equals anymore, it was a showdown between a self-declared empire and a man who refused to bow. And Jasmine Crockett had just realized that she wasn't debating a guest. She was facing someone much harder to dismiss, a man with conviction. Behind the scenes, producers were panicking. This was supposed to be a calm diplomatic exchange, not a clash of ideologies. But Ibrahim Traoré wasn't sticking to the script, and the woman once known for controlling the stage was clearly shaken. Ratings were through the roof, across the country. People were glued to their screens, no longer sure if they were watching a debate or a takedown. The host tried to move on, saying, "Let's shift to trade." Representative Crockett, what's your view on partnerships with developing nations? Jasmine adjusted her blazer, trying to get back in control. Look, she said, we believe in fair trade. But when countries start taking over industries and pushing out Western companies, that's not fairness, that's isolation. She turned to Traoré. Let's be real, without American companies, how much of your infrastructure would even exist? It was the same old message, the idea that Africa owed its progress to the West. Traoré gave a quiet smile, not out of amusement, but the kind of smile filled with memory, patience, and fire. Let me tell you a story, he began. 2 years ago, in a village in northern Burkina Faso, there was no electricity, no clean water, no roads. Western aid said the area was too remote, too small to help. So we built it ourselves with our own hands, our own tools. No loans, no logos, just determination. He paused, letting the silence settle. Then, a few weeks later, American engineers showed up. They came after everything was finished. Then they held a press conference, acting like they'd done it all themselves. The audience gasped. Jasmine flinched, just a little. We don't reject partnership, Traoré continued, but we reject being used as a trophy when the success wasn't yours to begin with. Jasmine gave a nervous laugh, trying to brush it off. That's a good story, Mr. President, but America doesn't need to take credit for every small win. No, he replied calmly, but America sure has a habit of trying. Silence followed. Even people watching at home could feel it, the ground shifting. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just debating anymore. She was facing a mindset that didn't seek her validation. For the first time in her career, she couldn't tell if she was winning. She paused, then asked, slower now, so what exactly do you want from America, Mr. Traoré? Should we leave Africa completely? No aid, no trade, no cooperation, just walk away? Her tone was skeptical, expecting him to backtrack. But Traoré didn't hesitate. I want one thing, he said firmly. I want your country to stop thinking we are something you need to manage. Jasmine blinked. I want the world to see, he added, that Africa is not an unfinished project waiting for a Western blueprint. We are a continent with our own architects, and we are done being told where to place the bricks. The room went completely silent. No one ever asked us where our borders should be, he said, his eyes sharp. No one asked what language we wanted to speak or what flag we wanted to raise. Everything was decided by countries that never meant to stay but never really left. Jasmine, feeling the pressure, tried to steer the conversation back. I think you're being too idealistic. Sovereignty sounds nice, but there are real issues: shared economies, security, regional stability. You can't just walk away from all that. Traoré nodded. You're right, Traoré said. We can't walk away completely, but we can walk a different path, and we can choose whose hand we no longer need to hold. He stepped forward, not with aggression, but with quiet authority. I'm not here to beg for respect. I'm here to remind you that we never asked for your permission to exist. Jasmine Crockett opened her mouth as if to respond, but said nothing. It was a rare moment on American TV, a foreign voice, not asking, not apologizing, but speaking with confidence and pride. And somewhere behind the cameras, a young producer whispered, this wasn't supposed to go like this. But it was, because this wasn't just politics anymore. This was history finally speaking back. Sensing she was losing ground, Jasmine changed tactics. She stood tall, using her hands more. Voice rising, a classic move when facts fall short and volume becomes the weapon. You talk about dignity, Mr. Traoré, but what about human rights? What about journalists imprisoned under your government? What about the critics you silence? You call out Western arrogance. Maybe you should take a look at your own. She thought she'd found his weak spot, but Traoré stayed calm, steady. I expected that, he said. That question always shows up when a black nation dares to take control of its own future. Jasmine frowned. Traoré continued, let me be clear. I don't fear criticism. I welcome accountability. But I won't accept lectures from nations whose hands are still stained with the blood of stolen continents. Gasps filled the room. A producer almost signaled for a commercial, but the director shook his head. Ratings were skyrocketing. Then Traoré added, "You put children in cages at your southern border. You bomb weddings from the sky and call it security. Your corporations drain our land for cobalt, oil, and gold. And then you tell us we're wrong for resisting. Don't mistake your discomfort for moral authority." Jasmine's face tightened, but she didn't speak. Traoré wasn't yelling, wasn't even angry, but his words hit with more weight than any insult. "You call it silencing when your voice isn't the only one in the room," he said. "I call it balance." The room shifted. Audiences leaned in, not just physically, but emotionally. This wasn't two politicians debating anymore. This was a turning point. Jasmine tried one more shot. "So now America's the enemy?" Traoré shook his head. "No," he said softly. "But sometimes friends need to be reminded where the line is." And after that final line, the silence that followed was deep and electric. Jasmine Crockett was the one who finally broke the silence, not with words at first, but with a sharp laugh. "You really think this plays well back home, don't you?" she said, brushing her hair aside. "That you're some kind of truth-telling revolutionary on American soil? Let me remind you, this is my country, and in my country, we ask the questions." Traoré tilted his head slightly, offering a faint smile. "In your country," he said, "questions often come dressed as answers, but go ahead, ask." Jasmine leaned in, trying to take control. "What exactly do you want from us, Mr. Traoré? You say you don't need our aid. You call our alliances manipulative. You keep casting America as the villain. So what do you want?" Traoré didn't hesitate. "Respect," he said, "not as a favor, as a fact." Jasmine scoffed, but he kept going. "I want your institutions to stop acting like we're students in a school you built. I want your media to stop cutting Africa out of the global story unless there's a war, a famine, or a photo opportunity. I want your politicians to stop walking into our capitals with smiles and walking out with our resources." Then something unexpected happened. Applause. It wasn't loud or coming from everyone, but it echoed from the back rows, from students, journalists, even off-duty diplomats, people who weren't supposed to clap, but did. Jasmine's face froze. She had lost control of the room again. "Do you hear that?" Traoré asked softly, turning slightly toward the sound. She sat up straighter. "That's not America clapping," she snapped. "No," Traoré replied, "that's the world, realizing that the silence they once mistook for submission was just breath being held, waiting to be released." Jasmine leaned back, arms crossed. She didn't speak, not because she had no words, but because her words had lost their weight. His hadn't. Backstage, the control room was in chaos. Producers were whispering over each other, unsure if they were watching a disaster or the most powerful moment of the year. Viewers were flooding in, so were the stakes. But on stage, Traoré didn't move. Jasmine, clearly shaken, reached for the oldest move in the book, the flag. "You talk about dignity, Mr. Traoré, and I respect that," she said, pointing to the small U.S. flag on her lapel. "But don't forget, this flag has meant freedom for billions. It stood against tyranny. It fed starving nations, including yours." Traoré didn't flinch. He looked at the pin, then calmly looked back at her. "I don't forget," Traoré said softly. "I remember everything: the food that came with conditions, the medicine that came with demands, and the soldiers who arrived uninvited." The room went completely silent. "I'm not speaking against the American people," he continued. "I'm speaking against the idea that power makes you right, that giving aid earns you loyalty, and that only one side gets to write history." A camera slowly zoomed in on his face. He wasn't angry or defensive, just focused and firm. "Yes, you fed nations," he said, "but only the ones who followed your rules. You stood against tyranny, except when it wore your own uniform, and you offered freedom as long as it carried your label." He paused. "But you can't wear the flag and a blindfold at the same time." That line landed hard. Even Jasmine flinched. It wasn't just clever, it was sharp, clear, and undeniable. "I'm not here to lecture," Traoré added, "but if you claim to support democracy, then act like it. Respect the choices of other nations even when they don't choose you." For the first time since the debate started, Jasmine had no reply, no sarcasm, No clever spin, nothing. Because he hadn't attacked her, he had simply held up a mirror. Jasmine adjusted her mic, trying to stall. Her confidence was still there. But something inside had shifted. She could feel it. So she did what many politicians do when they feel the pressure. She leaned into patriotism. "Mr. Traoré," she said, standing taller and raising her voice, "you come to this country, stand on this stage, and criticize us while benefiting from the safety, the reach, the global spotlight that we provide. That's what America does. We build the stages, we create the platforms, and honestly, without us, I doubt you'd even be here." It was meant to be a big finish, the kind of line that wins the crowd. But no one stood up. Traoré didn't react right away. He looked down for a moment, not shocked but disappointed by how predictable it was. Then he looked up and said something she didn't expect. "I'm here," he said, "because of what my people built, not what your people allowed." Jasmine blinked. "I'm here," he repeated, "because we survived the very platforms that were made to hold us down. I'm standing on this stage not because you gave me a place but because we carved it out from the silence you left behind." He stepped forward. "My presence is not a gift from you. It's the result of our resilience." The words echoed in the room like a bell. "You see just a room," he said. "I see the world watching. You speak for applause, I speak for what comes next." Even those who didn't support Traoré were quiet now. The audience wasn't just watching anymore, they were witnessing something bigger. And Jasmine saw it too. The momentum was no longer hers. And it wasn't just about that stage, it was about what that stage symbolized, and who had finally stood on it without asking for permission. A heavy silence filled the room. No clapping, no laughter, no noise. The audience, the moderators, even the people behind the cameras were frozen, not out of fear, but out of awe. Traoré didn't brag. He didn't smile. He didn't act like he had won anything. He just stood there, calm and steady, like someone who had spoken the truth and didn't feel the need to dress it up. Jasmine glanced around, hoping for support, a laugh, a nod, maybe even a word from the host, but nothing came. So she shifted her tone. "You speak of the future," she said, trying to regain her calm, "but the future still needs order, structure, security. That's what America provides. That's what I fight for." Traoré nodded with respect. "Order, yes, but not control. Structure, but not chains. Security, but not surveillance." Then, without drama, he walked across the stage and held out his hand. "Let me show you what we fight for." He pulled a folded photo from his coat pocket. It showed a school in a rural village in Burkina Faso, solar panels on the roof, kids laughing in the yard, and a banner that read, "We plant our own future." This school, he said, was built without loans, without foreign contractors, without debt, just people, land, labor, and vision. He handed her the photo. "That is our revolution. Not against you, for us." Jasmine took the photo quietly. Her lips parted like she was about to respond, but no words came. For the first time that night, she wasn't arguing, she was listening. And the audience wasn't just watching a debate anymore, they were witnessing two worldviews. One trying to protect its influence, the other trying to grow past it. Around the world, millions watched, Americans, Africans, and others, all feeling the shift. Social media exploded with posts and reactions. But one phrase rose above the noise. One man spoke. The room changed, and that's exactly what happened. By the time the debate ended, everything felt different. Jasmine gave her closing remarks, well-written, passionate, patriotic. But something was missing. Not because she didn't prepare, not because she didn't believe in what she said, but because the energy in the room had changed. When it was Traoré's turn, he didn't thank the moderators. He didn't repeat talking points. He didn't try to charm the crowd. He simply said, "Power isn't measured by how many nations salute you. It's measured by how many rise with you." Then he paused, eyes moving across the room, through the cameras, to the millions watching. America can lead, yes, but leadership isn't about having the loudest microphone. True leadership is about listening. It's about letting others speak. It's about realizing the world no longer revolves around one flag. Traoré ended with this, "I didn't come here to win a debate. I came to change one." And he did. As the outro music played and the credits rolled, The producers behind the scenes whispered in disbelief. They had never seen an audience so silent, so still. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #OriEffect, #Burkina, and even #Jasmine were trending across platforms. The next morning, headlines around the world read, "African leader stuns America on live TV." Traoré redefines what power looks like. Crockett faced backlash. But Traoré lit a fire that carried far beyond that stage. Some U.S. officials criticized him. Others, quietly, respected him. And Jasmine Crockett, she didn't hold a grudge. In fact, just a week later, she requested a private meeting not for damage control, but to understand, because something in her mind had shifted to. Sometimes, the most powerful words aren't shouted, they're simply spoken with clarity and conviction. And when a voice from the margins finds its way to the heart of power, the world pays attention. Ibrahim Traoré didn't come to win an argument. He came to offer a vision. And in doing so, he didn't just silence a room, he opened a new conversation.